Is it unnecessary for me? No, I don't think so. Although I would like to make a distinction. Could I travel without it? Yeah, absolutely. Let's do one more question here from YouTube. This one is from Tom.
I heard JFM say he never travels without a grounding mat. Isn't that a bit unnecessary?
Oh, let's talk about this. So that is true. I always travel with a grounding mat that I put on the bed. I sleep grounded every night. From earthing.com, not a sponsor. We've had Clint Ober on the podcast. And earthing or grounding has really helped me with my inflammation. I have a really bad autoimmune disease, and it has helped tremendously. And so is it unnecessary for me? No, I don't think so. Although I would like to make a distinction. Could I travel without it? Yeah, absolutely. And so is it non-essential? Maybe technically, but it adds value. And so there are sort of three categories that all of our stuff fits in. We have something called the Minimalist Rule Book. It's 16 rules for living with less. Folks can download it for free over on our website, theminimalists.com. And one of those rules is the no junk rule. And this applies to my home. It also applies to travel. Everything I own can fit in one of three piles. It's either essential, truly need it. It's non-essential, but value adding, or it's junk. The key for me is to not travel with junk. When I used to travel with a hairdryer, that was not junk for me. It was non-essential, but it added value. Now I usually stay at hotels, so they have one, so I don't pack it. But if Light or TK traveled with a hairdryer, it's going to be junk for them. It's just simply going to get in the way. Mm-hmm. There are some things I would travel with that I'd love to travel with, but they aren't practical. I get an ice bath every morning, and I've been doing this for about a decade now, and I really enjoy doing that. I can't pack an ice bath with me, and that's okay, so I go without. It's just not practical. I would also pack my own food if I could, but that's not practical either because I don't eat any processed foods. So keeping fresh foods on long trips doesn't work, and so I'm unable to pack those things. But what I will say is that there are 3 or 7 things. In fact, I was looking at your book, Light, and I want to talk to you about some of these things. There are 3 things I always travel with. One is a grounding mat. One is a sleep mask wherever I am because I can sleep during the day. I can sleep if I'm on a bus. I can sleep, if there's sunlight just coming through the window or moonlight coming through the window or EMF somewhere. And then earplugs, just a basic pair of earplugs that help me sleep without interruption. I'll put a link to the ones that I use in the show notes. But Light, in your book, on page 69, there are 7 items you have. But before we get there, you also travel with a meditation shawl. And I know for me, that would be an unnecessary item for a few reasons. One, I believe yours is wool, I read. I'm hyper allergic to wool. And so that'd be awful, right? I'm allergic to codeine as well. It'd be like if I rub codeine all over me and I end up with rashes, that's a huge problem, right? But you have a meditation shawl that you always travel with, and it is a multi-purpose item. Maybe talk a bit about that, and then I want to dive into these 7 different items that you have in your travel bag.
Sure. So I've been a long-term meditation teacher and practitioner. I've been meditating for over 20 years at this point. And my shawl, I first started using shawls when I went to India. And I meditated in India. And for those of you who've been to India before, you know that India has lots of flies, there's lots of monkeys, a lot of things. But so the meditation shawl is a way of just maintaining a temperature control. So making sure that you feel cozy, because the cozier you are, usually the deeper you can go in meditation. And who doesn't want to go deeper in meditation? It's also a mosquito or fly repellent because things can't really land on you and bother you during your meditation. And then I use it also as an eye mask. So when I'm on a plane, I'll just tie it around my head. It can also serve as a pillow. So the knot that I tie behind my head becomes like a little pillow on the flight or on the bus. And I talk about in the book, there are multiple purposes for that. And that's one of the things that that's one of my personal codes for the things that I carry is how many purposes can I use this thing for, and then I'll carry it. So for instance, I always travel with a journal, and this is just like a little paper journal that I can write anything with. I can learn languages. I can write down names of people whose names are very hard to pronounce, and I can write out a little map for people. So, and I could flirt, if I see someone who I find attractive, I can write a little note and with my number in it. And I talk about all that in the book as well. So, it's just a way. Otherwise, this would also go into a non-essential category, but it has so many purposes that it's something that I don't mind carrying around. And I suggest that we all find our versions of that. You don't need a meditation shawl. You don't need a grounding mat. You don't need a journal, but you may have something that allows you to be more present. And that's what the through line is on all of my points in the book, is that, it helps you to become more present. And sleeping, if you can do any little thing that helps you get better sleep, you're going to be a better version of yourself the next day.
And what's cool about that is it's not prescriptive in the sense that everyone should now travel with a meditation shawl and a grounding mat and earplugs and a sleep mask and a journal. Because the truth is, and I think what you're saying here is like, it really augments your travel. Mm-hmm. But if I carried it with me and I didn't use it, then it would just weigh me down a little bit, right? And so you had 7 items here in the book that I just wanted to go through a few of these. Sure. You talk about what's in my bag, my accessories. So you've got a good pen.
Yep.
In fact, later in the episode, Professor Sean, we're going to do a tour of his. Mm-hmm. He's a pen collector. He has extravagant, really expensive pens. What's the most expensive one? $85,000?
It's $500.
Oh my gosh!
I just got that.
Well, we'll do. We're going to do a pen tour with him. But you say you travel with a pen. That makes sense, especially with the notebook. You talk about the beads that you travel with. Mm-hmm. Talk about that.
So I usually wear a string of mala beads, and I do these. I facilitate these workshops and trainings around the world. It's one of the ways that I make money and also help to give back. And so because I'm living from a backpack, I don't have a whole wardrobe of, robes and suits and things like that. I usually just have a t-shirt and some chinos. And so if I'm just walking around with a t-shirt and chinos, I'm just a guy with t-shirt and chinos. But if I put some mala beads on, now I'm a meditation teacher with t-shirt and chinos. And it does a really great job of accentuating whatever it is that I happen to be wearing at the time.
Yeah, you're signaling, but I assume there's a practical aspect to that as well.
It's really just decorative, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about, you say you travel with a smartwatch and a smartphone. So yes. For me, a smartwatch would totally get in my way, but I'm not now prescribing, well, that's silly. I can't believe he travels with a smartwatch. How dare you, right?
Yeah.
But it sounds like you get some value from it.
Yeah, so I had one. I don't have it right now because it broke.
Oh, no.
Dropped it. And I haven't replaced it.
And yet he was still here on time.
I was still here on time. But what the smartwatch did for me was, I'm a big walker and I like to get at least 10,000, 12,000 steps a day. And so the smartwatch was just a way of just saying, okay, I've got this many steps. I've got this many more steps that I want to get throughout the day. So instead of driving to that errand, I'm going to walk that errand.
Yeah.
And obviously you can do this from your phone as well. Pull out your phone. And that's what I've been doing, but it was just a little bit more efficient to use the smartwatch for that purpose.
I do something similar with the Oura Ring. So exactly. I don't even think about traveling with it, but it's on my person, right? Smartphone you have listed in here, but then also headphones, a tablet, and a backup charger. Mm-hmm. Maybe talk about a few of those things.
So headphones, a lot of times I'll be walking around. So I'm spending most of my time now in Mexico City. And it's very much a walking culture. And I've been there off and on for a couple of years. And so I've made friends with people and acquaintances with people. And it's not unusual to be walking around and run into someone that you have become acquainted with every, 20 minutes. And so, but if you have earphones in, a lot of times people won't stop to talk to you. They'll go, are you on that?
It's a signal.
Yeah. And then if you don't feel like talking to that person, I'll just keep them in my ear sometimes. If you don't feel like talking to that person, you go, yeah. And you keep going. And if you do, you take them out and you talk. And that's just one, another way. Obviously, you can listen to things, podcasts and books and et cetera through your headphones. But it's a good way of kind of editing how you're investing your time as you're out and about walking around. And because it's a way to let people save face. And then you get to also manage your time a little bit better because it's not really like a personal thing. Like, I don't like this person. It's just that, I have time to stop and have this conversation right now.
And you might not have the attention or the resources right now. And so it's going to feel like you're blowing them off, even though that's not your intention.
Right.
By the way, Kobe used to do that. He wrote about that in Mamba Mentality.
Did he?
In the locker room, he'd have his headphones on because he wanted to meditate before the game, and that kept people from talking to him. But is that why you listen to a lot of audiobooks so that you don't have to carry books around?
Yeah, I can't. I don't have any space for books, so I do audiobooks for sure. Yeah.
Now, in your bag, in the book you talk about, you have about 30 items that you keep in your day pack. You have a button-down shirt, a pair of pants, 2 pairs of shorts, 3 pairs of underwear, 3 shirts, a jacket, a hoodie, a sweatshirt, a belt, a pair of casual sneakers, another pair of shoes, a pair of sandals, toiletries, refillable water bottle, meditation shawl, meditation teaching kit, tripod, podcast microphone, rechargeable battery, tablet, journal, and the mala beads. Now, has any of this list changed since you published the book?
No, not really. It's all kind of the same. Because again, I've been traveling like that for 5 years. So you can kind of see, okay, what are the essentials? Most of mine, I would say, are essentials in the essential category, except for the meditation shawl. But considering what I do for work, it's kind of an essential thing. And every now and again, there may be a sweatshirt that changes out, or I'll acquire a new sort of windbreaker. I just got a windbreaker, in fact, the other day, because I'm going to be on the road for about a month and a half. And although it's supposed to be warm everywhere I'm going, you just never know. And I happened to be in a retail store, and I saw this really thin windbreaker, which I actually wore on the plane here, which came in perfectly. And it balls up really nicely in my bag. So, I'll make little exceptions here and there. I don't know how long I'll keep it. The quality wasn't like, it's not exactly, high end or anything like that. But I'm definitely open to getting rid of things. Or sometimes, like I said, the watch broke. I haven't replaced it. I'm not sure I'm going to replace it anytime soon because I really had an affinity for that particular watch. So yeah, it just depends. But that's generally a good representation of what you'll find on me if you happen to catch me like traveling somewhere at an airport.
Yeah. So you're traveling lightly with these things, but it also helps you travel lightly emotionally, mentally, spiritually as well. You're not being burdened by material excess.
People ask me, like, when did you start to become a minimalist? And normally they're expecting me to say which date. And 5 years ago I started, which was May 31st of 2018. But I credit when I started taking my meditation practice seriously as the moment I became a minimalist, because it allowed me to not hold on to things so much. And again, a lot of the things that we have now, or especially if we feel like we have too much stuff, usually if we trace the steps back, there's some emotional thing that made us feel like we needed to have all of this stuff. And if we can create more spaciousness inside, we may find that you still keep it, but it's easier to let it go, especially if it gets taken from you. If someone steals it or you lose it and you find, I actually am okay without it. And a lot of times that's what has to happen. We have to be separated from it. The airline loses it or something like that, and we have to exist for 5 days without it. And you see, actually, I didn't really need it as much as I thought I needed it. So you mentioned, your kids having these items that they absolutely need. But as adults, we all kind of have this sort of childlike sense of attachment to certain things, and you don't really need it.
I would say the opposite also with children often manifests when they are present and they're playing. I can't tell how many times my daughter has lost her shoes. She leaves them at a park.
But she'll never lose that stick or that ball or something like that.
And so when she's in the moment, she's not thinking about, I need to go back and get those shoes or whatever it might be. It's that state of non-attachment that she's actually living in. She doesn't have to practice it as a 10-year-old. It just tends to happen regularly. Now, somewhere around puberty, we begin to then detach from our parents, and we start to attach to these other things within culture, whether it's material possessions or relationships or ideologies or dogmas or whatever it might be. And we're essentially trading one healthy attachment to the parents to a attachment that really keeps us stuck and prevents us from going quite often where we want to go. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that quick highlight from the Minimalist Private Podcast. If you'd like to go deep with the private podcast, head on over to Patreon. Just click the link in the description. It keeps our podcast and our YouTube channel 100% advertisement free. If you're not ready for it, don't worry. You can just check out this video right here.